and welcome. I'm so happy to see you. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Tema Staig, and I'm the Executive Director of Women in Media. Thank you. I see that we have a few members in the audience. I'm so happy to see you. So I have the great privilege of meeting people all the time in this industry. Many of them are way more experienced in all kinds of topics than I am. Some of them are on the absolute cutting edge of technology and storytelling, and this is my great privilege. I'm hoping that you will share the same passion that I now have, having met these incredible filmmakers who are just pushing the edge of what technology can do. I'm just so thrilled to have them with us today. And we're gonna get to the panel in a minute, but I have a little bit of housekeeping. So the Altitude Awards submission link is up. Cinematographers, gaffers, and camera operators are encouraged to apply, but you must be a Women in Media Pro or student member. If you aren't, please apply it through our website, which you may access through this QR code right here. Our website is womennmedia.com. The prizes are incredible, including a very, very long ingenue lens. It's worth like 16K. It's pretty crazy. It's also amazing because you get some very high-end people reviewing your work. We have an incredible judging panel. We have the writer, director of Quantum Leap. We'll be looking at people's work. She's also the voice of Ziggy. Her name is Deborah Pratt. We have phenomenal ASC DPs who also look at the work and they make commentary, and then people get to see your people get to see your reel up on screen during the award ceremony. It's very, very cool. There we go. We are about to get started, but I would like you to know that we're going to reserve a few minutes at the end of this panel for questions. Please hold those questions until we give you the cue to ask them. There will be a microphone that can go around, but we will try to reserve like 10-15 minutes. And I know you're going to have questions because there's so much to know about this incredible world. So please join me in welcoming Yasmin Elayat over here. She directed, wrote, and produced the Emmy-Award winning 0 Days VR, which played at Sundance, and she co-directed the Emmy-nominated The Changing Same, which premiered at Sundance as well, and won Best Immersive Narrative at Tribeca Film Festival. Previously, Yasmin was co-founder at Scatter, pioneers of volumetric filmmaking, and creators of Depth Kit, which is very important to know about. Yasmin has joined the New York Times as an editor, where she is exploring the future of spatial journalism in XR. Please welcome Yasmin. As an Emmy-nominated journalist turned technologist, Elena Piech, right here, is currently a producer at ZeroSpace, a next-generation production studio and event space nearby in Brooklyn. At ZeroSpace, Elena oversees projects involving virtual production, motion capture, photogrammetry, volumetric capture, Unreal Engine cinematics, and more. Prior to that, she was the senior marketing manager for the Glimpse Group, the United States' first pure-play VR/AR company to be listed on the NASDAQ. Please join me in welcoming Elena. And I had the great joy of going over to ZeroSpace the other day. It was so much fun. It was such a playground, just phenomenal. So, Kiira Benzing is the creative director and founder of Double I Studios. She is a multi-dimensional director, crossing the mediums of theater, hybrid cinema, and virtual reality. Her VR theater piece, Finding Pandora X, won Best VR Immersive User Experience at the Venice Film Festival in 2020, and the Virtual Cinema Audience Award at South by Southwest in 2021. Her interactive VR experience, Runnin', starring Reggie Watts, won the Jury Award for Interactive at South by Southwest in 2019. Please welcome Kiira. And there she is, doing what she does.
Excellent. Hello, everyone. So that photo with the green, with the very green background, where we are all turned green, is a lot of the light bouncing off, and working on a very large, Intel Studios had the largest volumetric stage at the time in the world, the largest that's been built. And we were able to have a cast of 12 dancers and performers with Reggie Watts and John Tahana for their wonderful production and album that they had created. And we did a single track. This was a piece, an immersive piece called Runnin', which was a really special experience where you started off going inside a record store and you could remix Reggie's music. It was also your moment of onboarding that taught you how to move through the experience. And then as we went further, we teleported through a poster. Reggie comes off the poster, he begins to transform into a three-dimensional version of himself because we captured him volumetrically. And just to understand, does anyone in the room understand, how many of you, raise your hands if you know what volumetric capture means? Okay, there's some of you. So for those of you who don't know, so that's great. I love that there are a bunch of you that do know. For those of you who don't know, volumetric capture is taking all these cameras surrounding the performer and the artist at the center and facing those cameras inwards, kind of the opposite of how we traditionally film, facing them around, and then we have the opportunity to capture that person in a three-dimensional form. And I think what's really special about volumetric, and Yasmin can also speak significantly to this because of her company Depth Kit that she was a co-founder of, we have an incredible, authentic representation of that human being. And Intel's version, because the cameras are so far away from the performers, they were so spread out, there's a sort of different stylization that we went with. We really took the voxels that get produced, almost these like three-dimensional pixels of a person, and we stylized them to make them even more abstract. And you might say, well, where is the eye line and where's the connection to the performer and how do we interact with this person? You feel their authenticity. You do have a sense of presence with them, especially in virtual reality. So in this shot, I'm calling from 4 monitors, but inside a room that I would fly in and out of very quickly in between shots is a room of another almost 20 monitors and 20 engineers. And it's a lot of monitors to call from, and I called very short shots for this piece because they were producing an enormous amount of data, and that was really special. So this was behind the scenes of Runnin', and now I'm going to play the trailer from Runnin'. Reggie's awesome voice performing, and Reggie was a blast to have on set, an incredible improviser, as many of you I'm sure are aware from his comedy and his performance regularly on the James Corden show. What was really special about this, again, as you can see, is we were able to capture multiple performers at once. And this was a proof point for Intel Studios and for a lot of volumetric capture. What can you do when you have multiple people at the same time. It does change what you're getting in terms of the resolution, but for a dance experience where you want to feel like you're at the center of a party, it's wonderful. And in this piece, we started to play with different possibilities of changing your viewpoint. So something that I do with my studio, Double I Studios, we have 4 very important principles. We believe in creating social connection in all of our experiences. So we want to make sure that people are connecting with each other, that virtual reality or augmented reality is not isolated. It's about the human connection and the opportunity to connect global audiences. We make all of our experiences interactive. So this piece, you're given these glow sticks, which also enable you to be like a percussionist in the piece, so you can drum on the different records in the music store. You can move around, and I was exploring the ethics of the human body with the performers, not letting you go inside their bodies as you can in volumetric, but as you move your glow sticks, you actually dance with the performers and their boxes react to your movement, and they float and morph away. Then,
So you're in the rave.
You're like in a rave, exactly, but like a virtual rave and a 3D, and like the next version of dimensionality, because your movement affects their movement.
Very cool. Can you play the next slide, please? Yeah.
And this is from Finding Pandora X. And that is most embodied, I would say, in this production of Finding Pandora X, which is an hour-long performance where we brought Broadway performers to learn how to perform and embody avatars. And our 4th principle is that of liveness. And so in a lot of our productions, we're either recording a live performer or they're performing live in the moment. And in this production of Finding Pandora X, our performers were scattered around the country. We partnered with HP that helped to ship gear across the country. And I took all of the principles that I've been doing in live theater and taught them to the performers virtually. And they learned how to become their own technologist and power their devices and also perform and move audiences and move their avatars through these worlds. And this production was a branching narrative. Half the audience follows Zeus into the underworld and half follow Hera to Futurist City, and they use participatory storytelling to reunite and solve puzzles together, and then we teach the audience to fly at the end in Mount Olympus.
I want to learn how to fly.
I'm happy to teach you, Tema.
I'm coming up. I'm going to be in LA and you can teach me how to fly from New York. I love that. Awesome. Next slide, please.
Stand back and watch for the closing doors.
Welcome to my world. You know, here, Mariana, you can experience the past and see the future. Our future. You want to answer, but entry needs
So that was a trailer from The Changing Scene, which is a co-production between Scatter, the studio I was a co-founder of for 7 years, and Rada Studio, who are documentary filmmakers. And this is episode 1 of a trilogy, and the idea of The Changing Scene, it's based on real events, but it's speculative fiction. Most of my work is documentary, you should know, so this is a little bit of a departure. But it is based on real events and real characters. And we wanted to create a way to examine 400 years of American history, racial injustice of American history, and find a way to travel through time, past, present, and future, and see how the past still shapes today. And so that's the theme behind The Changing Scene. And maybe I'll talk a little bit about approach, because it's one of the projects I think that really showcases kind of the approach of the films I've made. This approach, we call that scatter volumetric filmmaking, and for us what volumetric filmmaking is the marriage of gaming and filmmaking, so leveraging the power and flexibility of game engines and with the craft and sensibility of filmmaking. And a lot of the techniques we use, because it is based on documentary or real world events, we use a series of reality capture techniques, and then I like to say that we translate the real world in these experiences. So besides volumetric capture, which thank you for defining very beautifully, we use volumetric capture, it's our tool death kit. But we also do a series of things like photogrammetry, like we go to certain sites. Here we went to Marianna, Florida. We went and captured cypress trees, certain dirt roads, the house you see, the Cracker House. These all have historical significance, and so they're captured with photogrammetry, and then we create these 3D assets. So they're based on real places. And then we do mix.
I'm going to stop you a minute. Can you define photogrammetry real quick?
Yeah, so photogrammetry is, there's different ways to capture, but essentially it's using a series of photographs from different angles of an object and using the 3D software to reconstruct it in 3D. There's also other techniques like using LiDAR or other approaches, but we were using just DSLR cameras, 2 people, that's it, and a drone. Actually, maybe I should mention that, in a drone. But 2 people went on site, captured all of this, and then we work in 3D tools and then a game engine to design our world. Maybe one other thing I'll mention also is that a lot of the way we are working which is a little bit unique to these projects, is because we're building a tool while we're making films. A lot of the techniques are actually, we're building new things while we're making the films. So like in the example that you just saw, you can't tell here, but in the VR experience there's this character, the woman in the white dress. She's actually 13 feet tall in the experience, because she's a future-facing figure. She's coming from the future, and she's part of your hope and a guide in this experience. And to create that character, we needed to invent something that we're calling a hybrid avatar, which is merging motion capture with volumetric capture. So you already know what volumetric capture is, and motion capture, which Elena will speak much more about, but it's basically a technique to capture movement, so human movement. It's a way with sensors to track human movement. So we found and designed and prototyped a way to blend the two so it looks seamless, and you would think that it's one seamless character, but it's actually using a variety of techniques. And that's just sort of the way we work. We like to experiment with technology, but in service of the art.
Yes. Next slide, please.
Speaking of this hybrid avatar, this is actually on set us prototyping this idea. Obviously that's not the character, we were still testing. We were testing motion capture techniques. This is at NYU's motion capture stage. They have 2 actually with different tech. But this is one of them, and we were trying volumetric capture, which Corey in the foreground of the photo was trying, and we were just testing the 2 techniques. And this was March 2020. So 2 days before, or like literally the week that the world shut down. So this was us testing it. We realized we're not gonna be able to go this way, but that's how we work. We prototype, iterate, and if it doesn't work, we slash it. We found a different technique that we built ourselves actually to create this hybrid avatar. And because we were making this project during the pandemic, we actually invented a virtual production. So no actors could be in the same room. We had to find a way for the directors, for us to be involved, but we can't be in the room with the actors. So we did a whole way of virtual producing this film, and it was made during 2020.
Awesome. Next slide, please.
It's a covert operation. Maybe you don't know as much as you think you know.
Here is a piece of software that should only exist in the cyber realm, and it is able to cause real-world physical destruction.
Stuxnet wasn't just an evolution, it was really a revolution in the threat landscape.
Everyone's getting this story wrong, and we have to get it right. Stakes are too high.
We are the most vulnerable nation on Earth to cyber attack ourselves. An international war when some country targets a nuclear facility instead of an actual war.
I understand the difference in destruction is dramatic, but this has the width of August 1945. Somebody just used a new weapon. And this weapon will not be put back into the box.
That's not terrifying at all.
I love like something matters, but so that's 0 Days VR, and some of you might recognize a little bit of the interviews or the name. It's an adaptation of the participant feature film by Academy Award-winning filmmaker Alex Gibney. Alex Gibney in the film, I'm sure many people have seen it, in the feature film says something like, oh, what if Stuxnet, a piece of code, it's a cyber weapon, like what if Stuxnet could tell the story itself? And that I just latched onto that idea and I was like, oh my gosh, in VR, one of the value propositions of this medium is making the invisible visible. And so we basically signed on as an executive producer, and we adapted it and into an original VR version of the story, which tells the story from a completely different way, where you are Stuxnet. You travel through these cyber digital worlds, and you learn about this cyber weapon that at the time was the first cyber weapon that we knew of in history that could cause real-world physical destruction because it was targeting critical infrastructure. All the interviews are original interviews from geopolitical players, cyber experts, and an NSA informant. And I won't say any more because no more. I won't reveal too much.
You tell them, but they'd have to kill you, right?
Yeah.
Speaking of, Yasmin is working on a big project. I can't tell you what it is. It's with a friend of mine, but keep your eye on her because it's going to be very, very exciting. So I was told. I was like, okay. Next slide, please.
So hey, I'm Elena. I work at ZeroSpace. We're a huge virtual production 3D content creation studio based in Brooklyn. We're about an 8-minute walk from the Barclays Center, so kind of by Gowanus-Borum Hill. If anybody wants to come see the studio, say hey. And if you've been to the studio, raise your hand. Oh, all right, cool. So more people that can see the space. I'm going to try to be quick here because I know that we have some questions, some Q&A. I think one thing to say is I'm a producer, so I personally don't have these amazing pieces that I've made, but I help you all make cool shit. And it's just really hard talking about this stuff because it's new and emerging technology, and we can go deep into talking about these pieces, and it's hard from, we're so deep that we don't even know how to get into that introductory level, but even from pieces like Finding Pandora X, which Kiira worked on, that toured the festival circuit in 2019, that was really setting the standard for how do we get people to interact in these immersive environments, which we're still figuring out all these rules. We're kind of in, like a lot of people say, is the beginning stages of filmmaking. So when filmmaking first started, people thought, oh, we just place the camera in one spot, and then you realize that you can move the camera around. We're figuring out all those interaction paradigms, which makes it really fun. And also for background, this doesn't have to be, oh, I am a developer and I know what to do. This is such a new and emerging space that it's easy to work on your first project, learn more, and then get your second, third project on. I come from a journalism background. I got excited by 360 video, and then I found myself working in 3D. I think, Kiira, did you come from dance, or am I making that up?
I'm from theater.
Theater. Mm-hmm.
And then film.
Yeah, and then documentary for you?
Actually, tech and art.
So Can I go back one slide? So quick about ZeroSpace. We opened our doors in early 2019, and pre-pandemic, ZeroSpace was a ticketed immersive art experience. In that less than a year that it was open, it was voted by Time Out New York as one of the best things to do in New York City. So you'd walk in, you'd see these pieces from artists and technologists from all around the world. We were doing well, a little thing called pandemic hit, and we pivoted into this 3D content creation studio. In total, we're about 45,000 square feet. And like I mentioned, we're here in Brooklyn. Next slide, maybe. Cool. And the nice thing about our studio is we have a lot of different technologies. So from one of the largest virtual production stages in New York City to a Vicon motion capture stage. Vicon is the same system that Avatar movies use. So we suit somebody up, we take that data, we can put it onto an avatar, to working with volumetric capture, so such as Scatter's Depth Kit Stage, which is a volumetric capture solution that you helped create, to working in VR, AR, 3D, etc. You got to visit the space when you were here.
It was so cool.
Yeah,
It was so cool.
When they interviewed me, I wasn't even looking for a job, and then I thought, wait, this is like a kid in a playground. I can't say no. So it's a really great space.
Yeah, I brought my friend with me, and he comes from traditional filmmaking. You know, he comes from theater and film. And he was all like, oh, I don't know about this VR stuff. I don't want to wear a headset, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, just come, it'll be fun. We'll learn something new. We walk in there, we were in one thing, we were like skeletons dancing around. We could see ourselves, we went to another thing. And it was just so cool that he saw the volume and he saw how it could be used. And as we're walking out, he turns to me and he says, this is amazing. He's like, basically, it's just another tool for storytelling. And I'm like, yes, now you got it. You kind of have to see it to believe it, I think. Very cool.
Yeah, and so one thing that we have is the LED stage, which could be used for virtual production or car process. LED, and I know that there's an LED session at 3 going on here. So we have these LED tiles, we can put your content onto that wall, and now you can shoot. And an easy way to think about it is an alternative to green screening. Instead of shooting on green and then afterwards having to hand it off to a VFX team, you could just do a lot of this in camera. And you can do what's known as plate shoot. So we're just playing back images or video on the wall, such as that GIF in the bottom left hand, which is a promo that we did for the Disney and Gonko tour. We literally were just playing the movie clips on the wall, had the band in front of the stage, or that clip on the top right, which is a car. The stage works great for car process. And the nice thing about shooting on LED is, in addition to not necessarily needing to hand it off to a team to change whatever's going on in green, but then you can get those believable reflections when you're on set. So if you look at that image on the top right, we have our 2 LED walls to the side, our LED ceiling, and the great thing about those wild walls is you can move them to get the believable reflections on your vehicle, your talent, your prop, etc. In addition to doing plates, then you can do what's known as the full virtual production workflow. So we're building an environment in a 3D game engine, and then we're broadcasting that environment to the wall. And what we have is a camera tracking system. And actually, we're partners with 4 Wall Entertainment on our stage. So if you go to the Expo in the far left corner, 4 Wall's there, and they have a small virtual production demo going on. And what happens with camera tracking is we move our physical camera, we're then tracking that data and bringing it into our 3D scene. So that way your scene is moving accordingly too. So you get that believable parallax as if you were on site. And the great thing about us as a studio is there are some studios that have stages that you can rent out, but we have the full virtual art team here. So we're able to create the original content, or you could bring your 3D content to us and we can validate it.
And I can say, as a production designer and a producer, I really appreciate what you can do with the LED wall, because we're not shutting down the street, right? We don't have to deal with the cops, we don't have to deal with permits, blah, blah, blah. You just go into the stage and you can do that process. It's so great.
And we're a relatively new studio. Like I said, pandemic, we pivoted. This is relatively new technology, and so we're always eager to show people what it's like to use it. And frankly, one good shoot leads to a lot of really good word of mouth. So we did a shoot last month with HBO, and that essentially led to 3 big networks now hitting us up to talk about shooting on the stage. But it is, oh, I don't know how to use this, I'm nervous, maybe my next production. But once you get your foot in the door, you realize how it can make the logistics and the shoot day much easier. Cool. And then we also have our motion capture stage, so that image on the left, we suit somebody up, we place markers on them, we can then take that data and put it onto a character. That GIF on the right side is probably a really good example. That's from a fall promo that we did with Reese's for their Halloween campaign. And so that image on the bottom right is our performer in the space. You can then look at that top left GIF, and you can see how we're tracking their data in the motion capture system. And then we can do something what's known as a retarget. So if we already have your character ahead of time, we can in real time already show your character moving. And so that's great because then the performer can see themselves, the director can see what's going on, and you can modify those movements. And then in the bottom left side of that GIF, you can see how the final promo looked. And the fun thing was that we had two skeletons, and it was the same dancer performing both characters. And this is a fun shoot that we did for Melanie Martinez. She's an indie pop artist, and we had a contortionist in the space. They were moving around, bending their body in funky ways. We were tracking that data, and then we did this great little music video for her.
So what you're looking at, that's part of the space where I was. So that area with the green floor was then translated into this much larger world, as you can see. It's more animated, and it's pretty amazing. I mean, they were able to create a character that was moving around the space. So check out the video Evil. You can find it on YouTube, Evil, by Melanie Martinez. And remember, it was shot on that little patch of green right there with a bunch of small cameras around the performer. And when she's, can I tell them about the chandelier? How that worked? Okay, so when she's hanging on the chandelier, you can see on there, it was actually somebody on the ground with a rope doing the action, and then they flipped it, and they animated it to be the chandelier. Very clever filmmaking, very, very cool.
We can get fun with props because in that stage, we don't actually need the real prop. We just need the data that's associated to that size. So in another shoot, we had to do a Gatling gun, and we literally took a tripod and 2 crutches, and they're just moving around like this, and it worked.
It's so cool.
And then I think I have one more. And then we also have the virtual art department. And so we do a lot with making digital humans, things that are realistic or things that are more stylized. I just picked those 3 images because they're a little bit more on the realism end, because I do also think that from connotations of years ago, oh, this tech can't look real, no way, I don't want to use it. You can achieve really good realism now, and as the technology continues to evolve, I think the fidelity is going to get better and better. So that first GIF is we took this MIT Media Lab artist, we made her into a digital human, and she did a sculpture all virtually. We then took that virtual sculpture and 3D printed it, and then that aired with Bulgaria as part of a Milan Tech Week event. We did another piece that aired at South by Southwest, where it was actually a documentary piece, and all the flashback pieces were then done as digital humans to show the flashback scenes. And then that image on the right side, I hope I'm doing left and right when I'm talking to you, I don't know, is a project that we did with Justin Bieber, and something that we specialize in as a studio is getting all these different technologies to come together. So we had Bieber come by, he was in the studio for about 6 hours, and we scanned him, 3D scanned him, took that 3D scan, made it into an avatar, and then had him go on the motion capture stage, had him dance around, and he did a music video all virtually. And this one, I'll say, isn't true high fidelity because the final output was for a video game that's a mobile video game. So they went a little bit more with mobile gaming aesthetic, but we could have pushed the realism further had the platform been that way. And I think that's it.
Here we go. So I'm gonna only ask one question, maybe 2, and then we're gonna open it up to questions. Do you folks have questions? Raise your hand if you have something you want to ask. Okay, we've got a question or 2 there. Okay, I see you. All right, so where do you see traditional filmmakers? Where do you see them fitting into, this type of storytelling, immersive storytelling? Where can they see themselves in fairly short order?
I'll go first. I mean, I think that all the same rules and tools still apply. Like even right now, we're working with a brand. I'm turning their legacy mascot into a virtual influencer. And I just had a call this morning where we're going over the storyboards and going over the shot list. What are we going to shoot? Sure, maybe we're not shooting it on location with the real talent. We're doing it all virtually in the engine. But we still need a storyboard. We still need to write the scripts. We still need to think about the creative. And that's going on purely the virtual end. If you're looking on things like the virtual production side, a lot of the same filmmaking rules still apply. You know, we still, when we're shooting on the LED wall, we don't want just the wall. We want those practical set elements too, because when the digital and the virtual come together, or the digital and the physical come together, that's when you get really great looking content. And even when it comes to shooting, we're still talking about, okay, what's the frame rate of your camera? What type of camera movements are you going to do? And we might just want to sign off and make sure that those camera movements are going to work well on the wall. But for shooting on LED at least, if you're doing a playback shoot of just video or stills, we get a lot of first-time filmmakers who then shoot and then realize, oh, this wasn't as complex as I thought. And so I think the big thing is just being willing to learn something new, take a little bit of risk, but if you're doing this for the first time, make sure you're going in with a company that's going to be a partner with you. That won't just say, okay, great, here's the keys, you can do whatever. But that signs off. And even for us, the thing that we like to say is, let us early on in that discussion. A separate example would be is we're working with a news network right now on whenever you watch, or not news network, a television network, whenever you watch their sports segments, they'll say, oh, coming up in soccer, coming up in baseball, and you're gonna see little avatars doing the movements of kicking a soccer ball, shooting a basketball, etc. And originally we were supposed to just give them the data, but then we realized that the network didn't know, well, what do we do once we have the data? What's our pipeline? And so making sure that you're thinking about all those things holistically, but do it, it's great, and then once you do one project, you're eager to do the next one.
Very cool.
We're seeing the democratization of these immersive content creation tools coming into everyone's hands. So anyone that has the latest iPhone, you have the opportunity to do all kinds of spatial capture that ports to the latest Apple Vision Pro headset right now. And so there are ways to start to step into the medium. There are very inexpensive apps to download that you can start to play with photogrammetry. You don't need to just start with, you don't need to go immediately to a volumetric stage, although we all love working with volumetric stages, but you can start to play with these tools that are in your own hands. You're probably carrying some of these devices around right now. And just to start to think spatially, I think, is the first reason, an opportunity to imagine what spatialized storytelling looks like. And then when you have a design for a virtual world or experience that you want to take an audience into, then you'll have already been practicing with the tools in your hands. Then you go to the volumetric stage and you build out something much bigger.
Yeah, it's very cool. And actually, I learned that there are two apps you can put on your phone right now and start doing this now. One is called Polycam and one is Record 3D. You can get them off the App Store and you can start playing with it now. I just downloaded them. I'm going to do that this weekend.
I've used Polycam, it's great.
Yes. Yasmin, what do you think? What kind of traditional work will translate into this brave new world?
I mean, I feel like everything that's been said, I agree with. Maybe one thing I can add. I actually find the workflows. I mean, I work with a lot of filmmakers, whether they're my co-directors or I was producing, and I feel like for them, one thing that is a repeated phrase is, "Oh, this is the same workflow." I mean, it's literally the same workflow. It's just it's maybe a more hybrid team because it's using established disciplines of game developers. You could work with people from theater that translates really well to this space, and then and filmmakers. It's like kind of a mix, a hybrid. All my projects start with a script, like any other film. It might adapt differently once we get into the headset and work in a game engine, but it's a script. And we still have the production phases that are similar. And I think I was telling you, Tema, I think it's similar a little bit to maybe animation and VFX production workflows. So it's not too dissimilar. We just have some game developers and some other skill sets in the mix. But a lot of our team comes from film or TV production, actually.
Yeah, and this is a nascent aspect of the industry, so nobody really expects you to know everything. You know what I mean? It's sort of like when film started, or even do you remember the Nickelodeons? From your film history, how, people spun the wheel, they put their nickel in, they spun the wheel, and it was like a flip book, basically, and then it became film, and they had a static camera, and it was just people coming out of a factory, and then finally they figured out they could move the camera and tell a proper, fiction or a story, and then eventually we got sound and color, blah, blah. We're kind of like, we're not in the flip book stage, but we're sort of in the learning how to do a narrative stage in a lot of ways, and that could be you. You could be making those discoveries because it's so new. You could be pushing that side of the industry. So just jump in the pool and do it. So I know we have a question. We had a question over there. There you go. Hi, hold on, we got a microphone for you.
Well, thank you. I've actually been to ZeroSpace, great. Really awesome. I took the Disguise class.
Virtual Production Accelerator?
Yeah, I'm the one that shot the cool motorcycle stuff. So really great course if you want to get into virtual production that's offered at ZeroSpace. But my question had to do with Unreal versus Unity. So for you use Unity for yours, right? That's what I recognize?
We use Unity for a lot of our productions, yes.
It's because it runs easier on the Meta Quest. And is it because it's easier to run than Unreal?
We make a case-by-case decision on every single production. We just sat through this on a production that we're working on right now that's heavy VFX, but it has a lot of video playback. And we decided that we think Unity plays a little bit more nicely with video playback than Unreal at the moment.
I understand. Okay, that makes sense. All right, thank you.
Okay. We have more questions right there.
I was just wondering, have you looked into other forms of 3D scanning technology like NERF and these other solutions that might be integrated differently than typical polygonal 3D scanning, but yield strangely more realistic results in different ways, but I guess they're less integrated, but is that something that you've looked into?
I looked into NERF and light field technology. Our VFX supervisor was doing NERFs. It just hasn't been right for the productions that we're working on, but we definitely explore them. And again, sort of look at what's the story that needs to be told, how we best illustrate it, and then determine the technology from there.
I'll also add, I haven't yet worked with Gaussian splatting, but that's what I'm excited about. But it's essentially, we would still be doing the same type of capture techniques. It's just the rendering is just a lot smarter now. So it looked a lot better.
Awesome. Maybe we have a question.
Yeah, first of all, thank you all so much. Amazing. The virtual production panel earlier touched on Gen AI, and everyone's been freaking out about it over the last however long. In this area, it seems like much more of a tool than a threat. Can you all speak about how this is being viewed and used as a tool in kind of the technology's infancy, very similar to like the Nickelodeon example you gave earlier?
Yeah, remember when TV was going to ruin the film industry? No.
I can start. I mean, putting aside the fears and ethics of the data models and all of that conversation, one thing that is a possibility that is a positive one is the democratization of the creation of this work will become easier with AI. Right now, I mean, speaking just for my projects, like Shading saying we were 20+ team. It's not cheap to make this. You need a lot of skilled experts. And there is a very near future where one person can create a whole 3D game with AI. And you will need to know all the programming techniques, all the texturing techniques and things like that. So that's a future that I'm excited about. It'll be easier, cheaper, and democratized, and more people can get into this space. But again, there are issues as well.
I would say that I have a similar opinion where I think AI can be a really great creator tool, and even from shooting on the LED stage, there's a tool called Kubrick, which creates a 2.5D scene, where you can get some depth and parallax, and it's like you type in your prompt, and then you will get a basic scene for the wall. Right now, it's not as great as what something created by a virtual art team can do. And And the way that I like to think about AI tooling is watching a content creator on TikTok versus watching a film. Sure, there are going to be the pieces that might be created by a one-person team that can still have a great story, be really interesting, but you'll be able to tell the difference from content that is made by a full-end team. For us, what we're using AI tooling for is a way to do pre-building. And so even for me, although I'm not a developer, I can maybe concept things initially by myself, get the sign-off by client, and then take it to my team to really build and refine. But we're eager to look into how we can fully integrate some more of these tools into our workflow. And that's the weird thing about kind of this hype cycle that we are with AI tooling is every month it feels like there's something totally new out there. And so just taking time to try to read each week, okay, what new developments are out there, what can I use, what can I test, etc.
We have time for one more question.
I have 2 questions.
Can you combine?
For your volumetric capture, about how many cameras do you use?
How many cameras? Intel had 72.
Okay. For your mocap, I'm noticing that there's way less ping pong balls than used to be on actors. Is it because the software has gotten better, or has the placement of the tracking devices been more intelligent for the software?
I would say it's because the software's gotten better, and even for our stage, as we look towards making improvements, we want to add more cameras so that way we can better track the actor. But separately, and there was one GIF in there that I don't think I talked about, is there's markerless motion capture now that's coming out that uses AI to do pose and body detection. And so you don't even have to wear a suit, and you can literally walk in the space, and then within 30 seconds we already have you tracked, and then we can take that and put it onto a character. But going into the AI tooling answer that I just had earlier, the fidelity is not as good as our suited motion capture system. So what we try to say is, okay, do you have talent that has a limited window that can only be in the space for a short amount of time and doesn't have time to properly suit up? Do you want the better performance because they're not going to suit, or do you want the better data? But give it time, give it more training data, and these markerless AI motion capture tools are going to be even better and better.
Right, and there was that, they have gloves where you can really track hands, like if you have a drummer and you really want to see that, you can get a lot of, you can really see the mobility very clearly. Very cool, very cool.
Can I answer quickly one thing? Like just quickly about volumetric capture, while there's stages right now that have hundreds of cameras all the way to 5 cameras like Duncan and other competitors, there are now AI-enabled single camera volumetric capture, where it's inferring the rest of the human being based on the capture. So AI is really shifting even the capture technology.
Yeah.
What cameras are there involved?
Oh, every stage is different.
Yeah, and
Could you get away with GoPros?
For volumetric, you need some way to either capture the depth or from either the input or in the software. So it depends on the technology.
And one last thing to add on to that on the volumetric end that I didn't mention is, so we'll still have scanners depth kit stage at our studio, but we're partnering with a major camera company right now to install what will be the most advanced volumetric capture studio in the Western Hemisphere. The construction is starting. That will hopefully be done in May or June. So if people want to come see the studio in the summer, say hey.
Hey, 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 hey.